Does Boston College have enough to pull off the upset?
Or is this the week that Missouri proves that it's among the absolute elite teams in all of college football? All this and more on this crossover edition of Locked On Mizzou and Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, the host of Locked On Mizzou, and with me today for this special crossover is AJ Black of Locked On Boston College as well. We got a lot to get to on today's show. Thoughts about the line, the quarterbacks, the Bill O'Brien era so far, and of course the great state of Massachusetts comment by our own Eli Drinkwitz. But I want to say now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And AJ, I just want to start this program just with kind of a simple question for you. What's your level of confidence for Boston College coming into Columbia this weekend?
I'm not sure. This is a game I'm just having a real hard time getting a feel for. I look at the numbers, I look at what Mizzou has been able to do, and that they haven't let up any points, that they haven't, they've scored they're outscoring 89-0, something like that. And then the projections of what Boston College should have been this year, which is their over under was like 4.5. Obviously, they're playing a lot better than that. So I don't know if what I saw out of Bill O'Brien in BC the first 2 weeks is what I can expect for the rest of the season, or did he just really run into a terrible Florida State team and Duquesne? And I'm not sure. I think he is I think this BC team is good. And I think they're going to be a problem in the ACC, but I'm not 100% sure yet. And I'm really dying to see what they look like against a team like Mizzou.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. And what I'm curious about is what's been different so far, just 2 weeks into the Bill O'Brien era here, just compared to last season.
He's a billion times better than Jeff Hafley as a head coach. Like, this is a guy that, if you know your football history, has had, stops and runs at some big time stops, right? Like, he played, he coached at Penn State right after the Jerry Sandusky stuff, and still made them an 8-4 team with what was it, 50 scholarships or whatever he had. He went to coach the Houston Texans, made them playoff eligible 4 years in a row or something like that. Coached at Alabama. This guy's been everywhere. Patriots. And to see what he's done with BC's, just the program itself, has been pretty mind-blowing, because Jeff Hafley was like an up-and-coming coach, but watching him coach, he clearly didn't know what he didn't know. Bill O'Brien knows a lot. He's worked with Nick Saban. He's worked with Bill Belichick. He's worked on his own. And to see what he's done in terms of structure, because he's opened practices up for the media, it seems like a totally different world. Like, he comes from that Saban Belichick, tree. He's a stickler for details. After a game, if you tell him, about positives, he's already on to the next game, on to Cincinnati, So he's got a lot of that in him, and it's rubbing off on the team. It's much more structured, much more disciplined, much more ready to be a bigger program, and his style has done all of that.
Yeah, of course, Bill O'Brien was famously Tom Brady's quarterback's coach. And, I was just thinking as you were saying that there, really Deshaun Watson has never really been the same ever since he's no longer been under Bill O'Brien. I don't know if that's all that's been wrong with Deshaun Watson the last few years, to say the least, all of his off-field craziness as well. But regardless, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing to draw there. But since we're talking about quarterbacks, how about Thomas Castellanos? What have you seen through him through 2 games? And also last year as well. Does he look like a different player versus last year at all?
Totally. I mean, he last year was, one read, run. and it was exciting to watch. I mean, he's fast and he can do a lot. But in terms of passing, he had a lot of issues. He had 15 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. He had one of the lowest completion percentages. He also busted his shoulder up like 7 or 8 weeks into the season. Never said anything about it, but I was playing with a joint issue, and that I think impacted his ability to throw the ball. You bring in Bill O'Brien, you bring in Will Lawing and Jonathan DiBiaso, who's the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator. You've got guys that know how to work a quarterback, and you could see it in the way that Castellanos at practice and during games, he's much more confident with his footwork. He's able to move in the pocket. He's able to progress in the pocket, where last year it would have been, any sense of pressure gone, he'd run. So it's a big difference there. And he's got, already just through 2 games, he's got 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions and a really strong passer rating because he's not making mistakes. He's not making bad reads. He's not making dumb throws. And that's a big improvement from last year. That was the big question mark a lot of folks had, because obviously he can do a lot with his feet, and he didn't have to do any of that last game against Duquesne. They just let him sit back there. But that's going to be something he can use when he needs to, and not just the only thing he can do, which is what he did last year.
What I'm curious to see is if Boston College, and correct me if I'm wrong here, AJ, but I'm really curious to see what the Eagles can do when they're forced to pass. I didn't really see them be forced to pass at all against Florida State, and that's a credit to them. They played a really clean game, and they were moving the ball forward, and that offensive line was dominating. So fortunately for Castellanos, he didn't really have to ever pass the ball. So when he threw the ball, it was almost like, okay, it could have been a run, could have been a pass, could have been anything. What if it's 3rd and 12, though? Then what does he look like? That's what I'm going to be curious to see for Boston College. What would you like to ask me about Missouri, just to flip the script here for a second?
Yeah, let's talk about it. It's 2-0, but you haven't really played anyone yet. But I mean, the talent is there. What have you seen out of Brady Cook so far, and in terms of his quarterback, and is he going to be able to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC?
That's the question. I don't think Brady Cook necessarily has to be one of the absolute best quarterbacks. Like, does he have to be better than Jackson Dart and Quinn Ewers for Missouri to make the playoff? No, I don't think so. He's definitely got to be above average, though, for sure. And to be perfectly honest, he's probably got to be a little bit better than he's been the first couple weeks. Now, he's done a great job of being the game manager so far, in particular last week. Did a great job of managing the offense to just churning out first downs and getting points and all that good stuff. In week 1, he missed some deep shots and has been a little bit long on some of his passes because, to me, just some simple footwork stuff that he can clean up fairly easily. But I don't know that Brady Cook's ever going to be an upper echelon quarterback in terms of at that absolute tier 1 level. Is he above average, though? Yeah, I think he is. And I think that's what Missouri needs with the kind of depth that it's showing right now.
And Bill O'Brien earlier this week said 4 NFL wide receivers on this team, that there's enough talent. We all know about Luther Burden. I mean, even up here in Massachusetts, we know who he is, probably a first-round draft pick. And obviously he's going to be a guy that BC's going to have to focus on. But what are some of these other weapons that O'Brien was talking about, and who should BC fans know about going into this game?
Well, the first and obvious answer there is Theo Weiss, who had a huge game last week with 13 catches for about 150 yards, something like that. When Burden actually was out with a bit of an illness last week, according to Drinkwitz, and I just actually saw Weiss was in a first-round mock draft by CBS Sports this morning. Obviously really early for all that draft talk, but at the same time, that just gives you an idea of how good Weiss is as a player. I'd say Marquise Johnson, whose literally nickname is Speedy Johnson. The reason for his nicknames are quite obvious. He could maybe develop into that kind of player. I don't know that I'd go so far as to say there are 4 NFL receivers on this roster. That might be a little hyperbolic. There's certainly 2, though. I think that's pretty obvious. Missouri's 1 and 2, Weiss and Burden. I think both of those guys are NFL players for sure, and they're definitely going to eat if Boston College's secondary is not up to the challenge. And you know what? Speaking of eating, AJ. How about that for a transition? My
That
God,
was beautiful.
Am I good at this stuff or what? But coming up in the show, I do want to talk about the point spread and also the great state of Massachusetts line. But first, yes, we got to eat. Let's talk about Factor meals, because with Factor's no prep, no mess meals, you can make your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and keto. And you know what? I'm a big old boy, AJ. I'm going to need some Protein Plus. And I'm also a lazy man, especially when my wife is not around. So having 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, I'm always going to have new flavors to explore, whether I'm actually taking any time in the kitchen or not. You got to enjoy these effortless meals that fit your lifestyle. Just head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. And not only that, AJ, I got more deals for you. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on the Locked On Network, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's Double Your Winnings for all of Sunday, and that's Sunday, this Sunday, the 15th, pre-game moneyline bets, all of them. Profit Boost will be starting live tomorrow. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. And obviously, hey, since we're talking FanDuel, we're talking lines, let's talk about the line. 16.5 Missouri is favored here for a game between two ranked teams. So what do you think, AJ? Is that too high or is that about right?
Whew. I'm not. I think it's right. I think I'm thinking that 34-17, something like that. So right around 16.5 sounds about right to me. I expect that BC is going to try to do what they've done in the first two games, which is especially against Florida State, which is control the clock, slow down the game, shorten it as much as they can, and try to keep Brady Cook on the sideline. If that's the case, it could be a lower scoring game. That being said, I'm again not sure BC's, especially their secondary, hasn't been tested enough yet. Will they be able to prevent explosives against Weiss and Burden? That's another big question. If they can't, that's going to get that could lead up to some points. So, it's a young team with a new coach. And I think there's a lot of expectations. And Bill O'Brien says all the right things, but I get the sense too that they understand that they are a big dog going into this game. And I expect a team like Missouri that obviously wants to be a playoff team. They're going to be playing on all cylinders at home. This is going to be tough. And even, I wouldn't be surprised, if it's a 10-point game going down to like the 8 minutes into the fourth quarter or something like that. And then, Mizzou just gets one more touchdown and makes it 17. That would be something I would expect. I think maybe that could be the way it goes. It's like, it's not that much of a blowout. And then it's that like coup de grace at the end that just puts it over puts the betting edge over for you.
Yeah, I think maybe the problem for Boston College, I think there is certainly a formula for BC to pull the upset. It's going to obviously they're going to have to win the turnover battle. First of all, I think would be a big thing, to say the least, in any football game if you're going to pull the upset. But I'm leaning toward a similar score to you, AJ. I've got it 35-20 Missouri, and I said 35 because last season you go back and look at Missouri's offense, and there just weren't a lot of games where they scored fewer than 35 points. I just don't know. No offense to Boston College's defense. I just don't know that they're an elite unit that's going to slow down Missouri like Ohio State and Georgia did to some extent last year. I just don't know that. It looks like, to me, I think Boston College, from what I saw, is a really sound fundamental unit on both sides of the ball. The special teams, well, that's another story, especially the punting game maybe leaves a lot to be desired there. What have you seen from that?
I was at practice yesterday and or a little while ago, and I was watching the punters, and I'm like, hey, they've got to be trying that out. And Sam Candotti, their Aussie rules punter, has shanked 2 in the last 2 weeks. And I talked to my film guy, Mitchell Wolf, and he doesn't blame him for that, but I mean, I've seen enough of that. Like that's going to come back and bite them at some point if he kicks another one off the side of his foot. So I think that's a big issue. I just like with what you're saying with Missouri, like it's hard to like nitpick what BC's done wrong so far because they just shut out a team and just blew, you got to remember for BC in the last 5 years, I mean, BC almost lost their FCS game against Holy Cross last year. That's how bad Hafley had it. He was just not a thorough coach. To go against a Duquesne, and I know it's all FCS and whatever,
right, and
just blow the doors off of them was what you'd want. And so that's a big improvement. And then to start the season off with a top 10 win, it's hard to like find the negatives because they weren't like penalized. They had 1 penalty the first game against Florida State. Last year they had 19 against Florida State.
Wow.
It was school history record right there.
That sounds like a national record. 19, my goodness.
And it was against number 4 Florida State at home in the red bandana game, which is a big. Obviously, we're recording this on 9/11. It's a big deal, right? They had that game. They were down 31-29. It was third down, and they stopped him. But they stopped him by pulling the guy's face mask off. So then they lost because they had turnover. They turned the ball back over to him, and that was it. So it's a big change in terms of just like the team is much, as you said, much more sound. The tackling's better. The mistakes aren't there. So I think back to this is a team that shouldn't but shoot themselves in the foot. But against a team like Mizzou, could it happen? I still keep waiting for Castellanos. I love watching him play. He's an exciting player, but he has a tendency to make mistakes. I haven't seen it yet, but I still think it's going to be there. I'm just not sure when it's going to come out.
Now, despite all of Missouri's really good receivers, I just don't think that you can let Missouri just take its easy little dink and dunk passes and run that outside zone. I just don't think that's a recipe for success. Do you think BC has it in them to actually maybe dare Missouri to try to beat them deep a little bit and just kind of hope for some good variance there?
I think BC is going to have to play aggressive. Like they can't.
I think so too.
Like Tim Lewis, their new defensive coordinator, that's his thing, right? Like his bread and butter when you talk to him during the preseason was, I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going out, and like the players, like we're going to play like our hair's on fire. They're going to have to. They can't like sit back and just hope that their corners are good enough because they're not. They're good, but they're not great. You're gonna have to like get Donovan Azaraku, who's a really good defensive end, out there and making plays, or Neto Ekpala or Cam Horsley. All their defensive line has played pretty well so far. They're going to have to be disruptive. You're going to have to throw exotic blitzes at them, confuse Brady Cook at the line, and hope that he can make mistakes, because that's the only way you can win this game. I keep saying, I said it on my podcast yesterday, that like I think BC has to have at least 2 turnovers in order to stand a chance in this game, and that you're going to have Thomas Castellanos play Superman. I think there's a chance that Thomas Castellanos, this could be a game where he does do that, right? Like he has that tendency. Like his big thing is like he makes big plays when they need him the most. This could be a game where he does that, but you need the other side of the ball too, right? You need to have some variance there. You need those explosive turnovers, and I'm not sure BC has that in them to do that. So that's going to be the 2 big things. Can Castellanos play Superman, and can they make turnovers?
Yeah, I think I really agree with your analysis just based on what I've seen from BC. I watched all the snaps of the Florida State game and a little bit of the Duquesne game too. So you know what? too much agreement. Let's get upset at each other here coming up in a little bit. I'm going to finally pay off this tease that I've been teasing the whole show, the great state of Massachusetts thing. We're going to get there here in just a little bit. But first, though, let's talk about LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And the deal is, when you hire the wrong person, that's not just a mistake. That's a mistake that's going to cost you time and money and hassles and everything else. And it's the opposite. When you find the right person, it's better. You're going to want to give them even more money. That's the beauty of LinkedIn, because it's not just a job board. It helps you hire the right professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively looking for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, more than 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, AJ. So obviously 3 years ago, Boston College pulled the upset, although that was a pretty mild upset, I would say, at least compared to the 16.5 that the Eagles are facing this week. But I know Eli Drinkwitz caught a lot of people's ire with the great state of Massachusetts comment. Basically, he said, hey, I can't remember the last time Missouri got a recruit from the great state of Massachusetts, which is a very true statement. So be honest. You're really upset because Massachusetts is actually a commonwealth, right? That's what got your goat.
Yeah, that was great bulletin board material,
wasn't it?
Oh, it was great, and I think even when BC won, they used it in their victory graphic.
Why not?
That's the great thing about college football.
It's good
right?
fodder.
I have to say, and this is kind of going on a diatribe here, that Missouri and Boston College have nothing in common. Nothing. There's no history other than that game. There's, you're SEC, we're a private Catholic school up north. It's very different. But I gotta tell you, your fan base, they are loud and they are obnoxious. I put out 2 preview episodes so far about the game, and I really only talked about Missouri themselves for about a minute. And I usually, BC, it's, even though with Bill O'Brien, we're getting better. I got 10 comments usually. It's not a ton on my podcast. I got 85 yesterday. And they're all Missouri fans telling me I'm an idiot and that I don't know what I'm talking about. And that, you're going to hold the receipts. I'm like, I'm not even telling you that BC is going to win this game. So I love it. I love that we have fans that are going at each other. My fan base and BC fans are going at Missouri fans, and Missouri's going right back at them. That's what makes college football fun. So,
and you're welcome for the extra revenue, by the way.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful thing, all those extra.
Keep coming back.
That's all we're looking for, baby. I was going to say, keep hating on AJ. Keep hating on me, too, BC fans. I'm sure I said something that'll get their ire as well.
They did tell me multiple times that I needed to be on a show with you, so.
I love it. Well, we're doing it right now. I had several people say the same thing about you, mostly positive, but one person was saying that you were talking crap about our schedule. Explain yourself, AJ.
Listen, I said that for an SEC schedule, you had other than Bama, I think you got a pretty easy draw this year.
You're right.
And it's not, and then they went back to me and said, what do you have for the ACC schedule? And look at, I'm just saying objectively what I saw there. I'm not talking from a BC perspective because, yes, we're playing in the ACC, which is very
as long as you throw in the phrase relatively easy schedule, I'm cool with that. Because for an SEC schedule, yeah, you're right. It probably is the easiest one in the conference. But, yeah, relative to other conferences, any SEC schedule is hard, I think, is the point Missouri fans are making. But, yeah, we got a favorable draw. I don't know how you could really argue with that.
You dodged Georgia. You dodged
Texas.
Yep.
Ole Miss, who I think is really, really good. I've been on them all off season, just as a slight tangent there. But, one thing I'm a little worried about, just getting back to the BC game here for just a little bit, wheel routes. Trayshawn Ward down the field. Man, Florida State learned a hard lesson. I got to think the Eagles are going to be trying that play out on Missouri's linebackers again.
Oh, yes. It's I forget how many times my film guys did it. I think they ran it like 10 or 11 times.
Oh my God, was it that many?
Yeah, they just Florida State weren't covering it, so they just kept throwing it at them. So,
right.
Do it until their morale improves, right? So, yeah, that's been the go-to, and that's I think an interesting thing that I think we haven't brought up yet is that honestly against Florida State they were able to keep it relatively vanilla. They didn't like have to whip out, as you said, like the passing game, like didn't have to do much of that. And against Duquesne, they did none of that. Like they just went very bland. So there could be wrinkles with BC's game plan that we just haven't seen yet that I think they're going to probably unveil against Duquesne. I mean, not against Duquesne, against Mizzou.
Yeah. No, I got you.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's probably some stuff that they were going to unveil against Florida State that they didn't have to because they were up 14-0 early, basically just held the lead forever. Mike Norvell was down one possession and thought it was a great idea to go for it on 4th and 5 in his own end. I don't know, some strange coaching there from the Seminoles too, but a really, really impressive win. No matter what you think of Florida State, that was one hell of a win to start off the Bill O'Brien era. You got to give him that, no question about it. And by the way, a heck of a matchup here too. This according to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Colin McAndrew. This matchup of ranked teams here, Missouri 6th in the AP poll, Boston College currently 24th. The first non-conference game played at Memorial Stadium between two teams that are ranked in the AP top 25 since October 4th, 1980. Against Penn State. AJ, I was not even alive then, and I'm guessing you weren't either. So that's a pretty remarkable stat. And speaking of remarkable, well, that probably tells you that Gary Pinkel's non-conference schedule back in the day was not the most challenging thing in the world. And AJ, I hate to say it, I hope this isn't the most challenging game in the world for Mizzou, but I definitely see some scenarios where it could be. I'm interested to see how this plays out. The Tigers blow out BC. I think that says more about how good Missouri is than anything about BC. Bill O'Brien really seems like he's got this program going in the right direction. AJ, thanks for coming on the show. You got any closing thoughts? Anything you want to throw out at me at the last second here?
No, not really. I just looking for, as you said, I think for BC fans, it is. This is like the really last like tough game BC has, like Florida State, and then it's kind of like eased up after this. So anything could happen, right? Anything can go on. And I think for BC fans out there, it's important to realize like there's still 9 games after, or 8 games after, 9 games after this. So
sure,
breathe. And I know for college football fans, that's not easy. So
no, it's not. We don't have enough to talk about, AJ. So every moment you got to make something big out of it. But hey, AJ, thanks for joining me. Thanks to all of you for listening. And for AJ Black, I'm John Miller, and this has been Locked On Mizzou and Locked On Boston College.